All right. So, what is up? This is the War Dog. Welcome to Comic Book Theater with my co-host JR. What's going on, JR?
What's going on, War Dog?
Not much. Well, a whole bunch is going on, and we'll talk about that.
Isn't it?
Today we got Jason Lewis, and Jason. I think Jason is perfect for this topic because we may be talking about Snowflake and Safe Space. All right, I'm just kidding.
I'm good.
What's up, Jason? How's it going, brother?
Very good. How are you guys doing?
Awesome. So, like, first off, we're going to talk about the crisis that's going on right now. And we couldn't figure out what to call it. So I think the best way to talk about it is probably just call it the crisis. I think you guys all know what the crisis is. And if you don't, go out and try to buy some toilet paper.
Yes. Or bread or milk.
Comic books right now.
Yes.
So John, why don't you start us off here, brother?
Yeah, man. Let's talk about it. We've been seeing it from coast to coast, worldwide. I mean, I'm wearing my Steve Carino mask here to make sure that I don't have to worry about any of these viruses that shall not be named. And it's affecting every part of our lives these days. I mean, from rumors that Wonder Woman might be released digitally only, not go to theaters. LCSs are having some issues, that kind of stuff. People are wandering around, not with these masks, but with other masks on. And yeah, I'm going to pull this back down because it's just ridiculous. I hate that. Messed up my beard. Anyway, how are you guys? What's that now? It looks like I have a scarf on.
You look so nice with a scarf on.
I look hip. Let's take that off. Anyway, how's it affecting you guys? You guys having issues with your LCSs or any things that you would normally had planned? How's it affecting your guys' normal lives?
I would say Ohio. I think we're kind of the head of the curve right now as far as restrictions that we're starting to get. I mean, our schools closed. I think we were one of the first states that closed our schools. My wife's a school teacher, so that sent her home. They're doing online schooling a little bit. And but yeah, I went to the LCS on Wednesday. I asked the guy, kind of joking around with him, if he was seeing any impact on his business, and he said not yet. But yeah, I'm sure. I actually think Ohio, it won't. I'm hearing rumors that we will be going mandatory quarantine starting on Monday. So we'll see if that happens. But that's definitely that's the rumor that's going around right now.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it has to do more with the fact that we're all having to deal with rumors instead of facts. People are either people in the know are leaking information early, or they're just making it up as they go along, and I'm not sure which it is. Todd, how about you over in Georgia?
Georgia is pretty much locked down for the most part too. I'm working from home. We're not supposed to go out, but they haven't closed all the stores. I mean, and LCS being open doesn't sound like it's something mandatory unless you're like me, and you need something to do on Wednesday, right? But I did walk into the one LCS, and the guy was like kind of looking at the door, and he's like, "Are you sick?" And I think he was joking for the most part, but it was barren inside the LCS, and I'm a little bit worried that these comic book shops aren't going to have people coming in, or like new people coming in, basically. And then also, I did say to my comic shop that if I can't come in on Wednesday, and you need me to pay for my pull box, just let me know, and I'll pay ahead of time. So, I mean, those are some of my concerns. I'm really worried about comic books and toilet paper. And toilet paper is more valuable than comic books right now.
Oh yeah, well, and Robert actually brought up in the comments over on Facebook. By the way, guys, if you're watching us on Facebook, go to Comic Book Theater. I'm monitoring the feed there, He called it the stand. I don't know that we're quite to that with Stephen King's The Stand yet, but the fear factor is certainly there. I don't remember a fear being in the air the way that it is since 9/11. The day after 9/11, the days following 9/11, there seems to be an actual fear going on. And I personally think that that could be as bad or worse than the virus itself. I mean, because let's be real here. I believe that it was here before they started testing, of course, and before we even knew about it. We can go into some of that if you guys want to. Unfortunately, it's all going to be kind of hearsay and rumor a little bit with us because it's going to be what we understand. And like we were saying before, it feels like we're having to deal a lot with hearsay and rumor at this point because we have a wealth of information, but nobody's really saying anything. They're not giving us any new information. They're giving, hey, quarantine order this. They're giving reports on new cases, but we're also talking about a very small section of the population that's being tested or testing positive. And still there's this reaction. Now, those in power, I think, are a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. So they're erring on the side of caution by making some of these orders. But it also is a little scary that they're willing to take so many liberties with taking away liberties. And I'm not, again, that's just personal opinion of mine. But on the flip side, we're in a society and you have to be cognizant of the other person and knowing that even if none of the three of us necessarily would be in a high risk if we contracted said virus, but we may be transmitting it to somebody who is. And there are people out there, it's not like people are walking around with signs on their forehead saying, I'm high risk, please don't infect me. That's not possible. You know, you can't always tell if somebody is a diabetic or is an asthmatic or some of these things that would make them high risk. So I get where they're at, but kind of like what you're talking about, Todd, I worry a great deal about LCSs, guys. A lot of LCSs out there, let's be honest, they're collectors first. They're not always businessmen and businesswomen first. So a lot of times they're working on a shoestring budget, and something like this where somebody may not come in and pick up their pull list for 8 weeks possibly, man, that could be serious undoing. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's that's a lot of weeks to go not getting paid for product that you're carrying. So yeah, definitely.
Well, they're doing it on credit. A lot of them are doing it on credit. If you look at the way Diamond is structured, and I'll be honest with you, I've done some research on the way it's all structured because I had a local shop go out of business last year after doing a GoFundMe account, and the comic book community really got behind these guys and tried to help them make a go of it, and they still couldn't make a go of it. And that was after getting a fairly sizable chunk through a GoFundMe. You look at something like this, man, a GoFundMe isn't gonna cut it. A government stipend check for $1,000, $2,000, that's not gonna cut it for some of these shops that are racking up bills to Diamond.
It's not just the shops. I mean, it's people. I talked to somebody that I work with, and their husband was laid off. So I mean, that husband might have been a comic book collector as well. So yeah, I mean, it does definitely affect the comic book community, and there probably will be less buyers, and then there's less people that want to go to the shops and actually buy this stuff. Jason, you had a comment. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you take 8 weeks, you look at a bunch of customers who've taken 8 weeks off. Even when this is over, how many of those you lose, they don't come back after 8 weeks. You know, they've moved on to something else. So yeah, definitely be concerned with that. And you mentioned somebody who's lost their job. I got my younger brother. He works at a plant. That plant is shut down. So you know, he's not buying. You know, you got people who just, it's going to take them a while then once they go back to work to get up on their bills. So that's an extended period of time where you're putting off, you know, buying comic books. So
Well, yeah, and actually, just like that, Jason Ingram just posted, you know, LCSs, flea markets, antique stores, all of these secondary marketplaces that we would look for things that we might go hunting for comic books or any type of collectible stuff. It's all going to get hit. The other thing is you got to think about it in terms of comic books in general are not a staple for living. They're not a necessity. You're saying, you got to get caught up on your bills first. It could have ripple effects in our community 6 months down the road still, of
yeah,
people trying to get caught up before they're like, yeah, I can go back into the LCS and pick up my pull list. Now, one thing that I know that some LCSs have started doing is not doing pull lists, they're only doing back issues. I think some of those places stand a better chance of weathering the storm because they're not so beholden to Diamond for their customers, and all of their stock is basically already paid for. They have to worry about keeping the lights on and paying rent and hopefully paying themselves a little something too, but they don't have that massive bill that comes in every month for getting comic books and graphic novels shipped to them 4 times a month. You know, I like you say, I did the research on it, and you know, in some cases where they're able to get credit, some of these guys are tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and they're just paying like a credit card. They're paying minimums to keep the credit rolling. Those are the places that I really think we should all be worried about. They're the places that, man, if you're not careful, they're gonna go away, and they're gonna go away in such a way that they'll be there one day and the next day they're just not there.
And that almost sounds like a great South Park where the Chinese chef is building his shitty wall, right? And comic book nerds are running over to China because they're like, all the comic book shops are closed and you bastards closed them. And this guy's building his shitty wall. Um, oh my God.
Uh, yeah,
But so I mean, this is almost like I've heard a lot of people say like I've never seen anything like this before. I lived in Buffalo. I mean, we had some blizzards, and I remember people saying I never seen anything like this before. Um, it's almost like a Robert Kirkman novel. So I mean, how do you think the response to all of this has gone? Like a government response. I mean, if you were writing a comic book story, I mean, this is a good beginning to what might happen, right? So, I mean, Jason, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
it's to talk about it without getting political. I personally, I wish they would have just said,
good luck.
listen, this is serious. We're shutting everything down for 15 days, and 15 days where, you know, everybody stays in the house, and then this will die out and we'll be able to move on. But it's the water drip effect of information and what we're doing and what's the new rule today, and is this going to happen tomorrow? That's what breeds the panic, you know. So I just wish they would say, here's what we're going to do. It's going to last this long, and hold on to your seat, you know.
I think that that's a good way to do it as well. One of the things that puzzles me is the urgency and the act of it being such an emergency is semi-negated by the fact that when you see an official get on TV and they give their little speech, they really are not giving you any new information other than new cases in your area and possibly a reminder to do certain things that we all should know how to do by now. Wash your hands. Don't invade people's personal spaces. And I know I'm oversimplifying it, but the truth is, if it is such an emergency, why aren't these things effective immediately? I literally just watched the governor of my state, Missouri, a few hours ago say, "Hey, we're doing a basically a state of emergency. No more than 10 people in a gathering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." But it's effective on Monday at midnight.
Yeah.
Okay, if it's really an emergency, if this is really something that if you don't address it immediately, people are going to die and massive amounts of people are going to die. Why is it not effective immediately at the end of this sentence?
Yeah.
Why is it Monday at midnight? Now look, I get that the world doesn't just come to a halt. But on the flip side, if you say, "Hey, look, you effective immediately, if you're listening to this and you're in your house, you're not allowed, you should not be leaving your house except for food or doctors. That's it."
Are people still flying in and out of LaGuardia right now?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to.
They're flying out of CVG. You can go in right now and get yourself a $60 airline ticket to Florida. If it's shut things down, if they need to be shut down.
I agree. So in that way, I think they negate some of the feeling of the public that it's an emergency by them doing all of these things like delaying it. Because again, you and I both know we're all parents or had parents of some type. I know Todd was raised by wolves, but that's beside the point. In Buffalo, I mean, geez, who lives in Buffalo, for crying out loud?
And go from Buffalo to Atlanta?
I know.
One losing team to another losing team.
Anyway, we all know that if it's an emergency, you address it immediately. You don't then say to people like your kids, you don't say, "Hey kids, I really don't want you to be playing in the streets, but since you're already in the street, you have 30 minutes to get out of the middle of the street." You don't do that. You address it immediately. You say, "Hey, look, at this point in time, if you're away from the house, get to the house as quickly as you can. Whatever you're doing, be done doing it and go home."
So I think the government's response was okay on this. I do like the fact that they're taking it seriously. I didn't expect that, and so that's cool. So I'm happy about that. I'm happy that the government is actually working together for like once, except for like idiots like Nancy Pelosi who tries to slip an abortion. We've been arguing about abortion for 30 years, and she tries to slip it into the coronavirus thing and get it signed. Like, no, like, argue about that on your own time. Let's worry about this coronavirus like right now. I know you guys are dying to talk about this. So, Jason, if you guys have
I said I wasn't going to get political, but here you go.
Hey, it's Todd's show, man. We're just living.
This is like a Robert Kirkman novel. I mean, this is the beginning of a Robert Kirkman novel. All his stories start this way. So, like, what do we think?
Never let an emergency go to waste. Get every dime out of the American taxpayer you can get and fund all your pet projects. How do you get Republicans and Democrats to get along on something? Well, we're going to pay you all. We're going to pay all of you. Line up for that money.
Oh yeah, well, like you said, don't let a good emergency go to waste. Look, the truth of the matter is, again, like I say, part of them have been handling it very well. The ones that are doing what they can, and in a way, those people are damned if they do and damned if they don't. But on the flip side, it does feel like no matter what, there are going to be opportunists at every level of life. There are people who are opportunists. They're going to take the opportunity to see if they can either slide one by you or stick it to you. Because okay, let's look at that strategically. Okay, strategically, you throw it in there. If people aren't reading it and they just want something passed, you get a victory. If you read it and you don't pass it, then you go to somebody and say, look, they didn't even want to pass it. These guys are a bunch of jerks. What's the matter with them? They don't want to help anybody out. They're killing people.
Trump hates old people.
Well, that might be true, actually. I'm not here to debate whether he hates old people or not. I think he hates, no, I'm just kidding. I hate everybody equally, so I'm good, whatever. Like I said in the pre-show, I know we weren't going to try and get too political. I'm libertarian, man. I hate both sides equally. I'm good at calling both sides what they are, which is look. This is the part that people aren't really talking about the folks in Washington too. Is there was some insider trading going on there? People with advanced knowledge of what was coming down the pipes with the virus that shall not be named, and they're saying, our stock market's going to take a hit. Hey, sell me out of this.
Yeah.
In the realm of six figures.
They crashed our economy. Yeah. They're traitors. They're traitors and they should go to jail. Martha Stewart went to jail for that.
But they won't. They won't. You know as well as I do, none of them will be prosecuted.
I'd hang them.
Well, I mean,
you're a traitor. Traitor.
There's a part of me that feels that way too, but then there's also a part of me that says, don't overreact to them just because.
Well, let me work on that part for you, John. And I'm going to quote Thomas Jefferson, who said, sometimes the tree of liberty has to be watered with the blood of tyrants.
Well, I mean, the truth is we're the ones that are allowing the tyrants because we have the ability to vote them out. The downside is we don't have the willpower to vote them out. We can go down this a long, long way, Todd.
Well,
I mean,
no, that's fine. And this is the apocalypse scenario, and so I mean, don't take it too seriously. We're not arguing and being pissed off at each other. Like when I looked at the whole financial thing that you guys were talking about. I mean, if you were a senator, you what would you do? I mean, if you were in their shoes and you heard that trade with China is going to be cut off and trade with Europe's going to be cut off. Now, I've traded stocks, and I will tell you, like, if I heard the word outbreak, I would probably sell. I think outbreak is kind of like a trigger word for sell. I do agree with the insider trading thing but I won't get too much. I don't want to get too much into that. I mean, you guys up.
This is where they, as public servants, actually should be the ones that are having to be okay with giving away part of their rights in such a way that they really complain. People really complain when they think that a government official is trying to profit from being a government official.
Yeah,
and I think that's true of both sides.
Yeah, I think Americans are sick of seeing people go to Washington, D.C. and become millionaires.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. But this is where you fix something like that and this will never happen again. Guys, we're pie in the skying this. Like really, truthfully, this would be only happen in a comic book because the truth of the matter is these people have no interest in limiting their own power or limiting themselves in any way. They are interested in furthering their own agenda, whether it be for their personal gain or for their party gain. Period. And that is not a political statement. It's a statement of truth because it's true about both sides. It's true about both sides because look, they're not willing, especially in the Senate, They're not willing to put term limits on themselves. No way, they're not doing it. What one senator said, one senator submitted it, and it never made it out of committee, even though his party was the party that was in control of the Senate at the time.
Now educate me here. Okay, so we got the judiciary,
Mm-hmm.
executive, and then we got the legislative. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
the executive and the judiciary make it so that there's term limits in the Senate.
They can't, because the law. Well, technically, I guess they could, considering that in a lot of people's opinions, we're in a post-constitutionalist America. Man alive, we're getting way off comic books. But
Have you
I'm
guys
willing to
read
talk
Deceased?
it. Zombies, right?
It was
Zombies.
pretty good. It's a virus.
You know, I will say that one book that I have read that I wish they would turn into an actual comic book. They've already done the movie of it, so it'll never happen. Is World War Z. It's a social commentary based around a zombie apocalypse. It's really well done. Max Brooks does an amazing job with that, and it's not at all. It's not really at all like the movie was. But Todd, to answer your question real quick, and then I'll really will try and swerve it back to comic books as best as we can here. Is the legislature, man, is the one that's technically supposed to come up with the laws. And so they submit the laws then to be signed by the president, and then the judiciary, they just review the laws if they ever come under scrutiny and say whether they're constitutional or not, whether they abide by other pre-existing laws. So like you say, they'll never limit themselves term wise. They're always going to vote for their own pay increases.
Well,
It's
that's friggin' ridiculous. I mean, so that's just
it was an oversight by our founding fathers. It just truthfully is.
Yeah, but so Deceased. I mean, tell us a little bit about Deceased, because that's a virus situation there.
Yeah, so you haven't read any of it?
I read
So-
like the first three.
Yeah, so you saw that the virus, it was a technology virus. So people looking at their cell phone, social media, they become infected. So it was I thought that was an interesting way that this thing spread. It spread rapidly. You think about how many times a day you look at your cell phone, and so you have all these superheroes who are turning into zombies one by one, and this thing just massively spreads and destroys the planet. So it was an interesting read, and it's continuing on. They're continuing the storyline, so I've enjoyed it. I think it's definitely worth reading. Pick it up, check it out. It's had really great covers too.
Oh yeah, the covers. I've picked up the books. I just haven't read them all. The one thing about the cell phone thing, the cell phone causing the virus. Stephen King wrote a book called Cell, where the same thing happens. And
Right.
like when I read that, when I read the first book, I was like, okay, did Joe Hill write this?
No, he even though he is under the DC label there with, was it Hill House Comics or something like that?
Yeah, I think.
But yeah, look, there's not many ideas that haven't already been covered in comics, so I'm going to forgive him for. And not only that, Stephen King is such a prolific writer. Lord, that guy, if you read any of the Dark Tower series, he borrows his fair share himself, to be honest. So it's I've not read that one. I was trying to think here, you know, there are a couple of superheroes, not superheroes, but supervillains that have been disease based, like Typhoid Mary and Vermin and some of these others. There's a couple of them out there that way. I think that, not to be too morbid about it, I think somebody should do a top 10 on that at some point, maybe, of superheroes or supervillains that either got their powers from a disease, like isn't Cable's arm and stuff, isn't that some kind of techno virus thing too that he got. I'm trying to remember here. You guys, oh, well, Corey's not here, so it's hard to ask that question.
Yeah,
He
I was
knows
never
all
a
that
cable
stuff.
guy.
Yeah, I wasn't a Rob Liefeld guy, so I know that's a shocker to everybody who's ever listened to me say anything.
Yo, so I know you're a Spider Woman guy. Did you read the Spider Woman #1, and was it any good?
Yeah, I like, of course, I love Spider-Man, and therefore I love Spider-Woman. I read the first issue. I will definitely read the second issue. You know, it's cringy at times. I'll be honest, it's cringy with the way writers at Marvel and DC, they go into the social justice warrior mode with her. So I'm like, oh my god, if it's every issue is her being the super empowered feminist, and you know, if you read the first issue, there's a bunch of teenagers at a birthday party, and one of the teenagers is, using sexist language, and she throws him across the room, which I always find funny that he says some words that were offensive, and she violently throws him across, you know. I was raised, Todd, with sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But not in today's world that we live in.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. We can do our best to teach our kids to turn the other cheek and not be offended by words, those kind of things. But yeah, unfortunately, man, that is not the world we live in anymore. That's the sad truth of the matter. Words hurt.
Well, I'll see how it continues. I'll definitely read the next 2 or 3 and follow it. But it was cringy at times, I thought.
Well,
It's lazy. It's lazy writing to do that, but whatever.
It is.
Yeah, they like to force those things into into comics, and I don't know who they're trying to appeal to. Like, why not appeal to actual people that buy comic books and not Twitter? Like, I want to read a comic book that most Twitter people don't like.
Well, and that's the truth right there, is they're appealing to Twitter trolls and social media trolls. They feel as though, and to a certain extent they're right, they have a lot of us in their pocket regardless of how good it is. Because you've got the collector out there that's a completionist, that, you're a Spider-Man guy, I'm a Spider-Man guy too. I've decided that I'm going to judge. I'm getting all of Volume 1 that I can of Amazing Spider-Man. That's one of my goals. But after Volume 1, I'm going to start picking and choosing after that, because I've decided that I can't be a completionist, because there's not only is there suspect writing, but there's also, Amazing Spider-Man 666 has like 200 freaking variants to it. How are you going to be a completionist at that point? You can't be. Or you have a 1 in 2,000 variant that goes for $1,000, and I'm sorry, I'm not hunting that down. I'm just not.
Yeah,
and I'm not paying $1,000 for it.
I gave up on being a completionist when I was trying to complete all the Barry Sanders cards, and all of a sudden, there's like an extra updated series, and I can't get that because it's $80. So and that kind of sucks, right?
Right. Well, and I come from that vein too, Todd, of whenever I was a kid in the 90s collecting sports cards, and then you come to today's day and age, and I think comic books did take quite a few cues from the sports cards arena in doing the variants and the limited editions and stuff like that. But just like you're saying, trying to buy one single pack that has a guaranteed autograph and game used and this and that, but it's going to cost you $250.
And
There's
then
no way you're getting any return on that investment.
and then there's those dudes that go into the store and they got like little scales and they're measuring, they're weighing how much a
Seen that.
cards weighs, right? And they're like, I'm going to take all these, and some
Yeah.
poor little kid can't get. He's not going to get the Jose Canseco, FU bat or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Kids ain't buying baseball cards, and they're not buying comic books.
No. Well, I mean, again, return on investment for them. And I think, let's be honest, even people who are not speculators, they do it. They just do it in a much different way of, if you're not speculating on what the future value of a comic book is being, you're speculating on whether the story is going to be any good or not. So you're still looking at a return on the investment. Is your time reading that comic book going to be worth the investment of your time? But is it also going to be worth the investment of the cover price for that book as well? So if it's guaranteed going to be a smoking story, like, let's be honest, most people would agree Donny Cates pretty much kills it on about everything. I know I have heard some rumblings here and there that I don't necessarily agree with, that he's only a fan service writer. All of his stuff is all just for fan service. I don't buy that. I think he's got the right degree of fan service and the right degree of nostalgia, what I would consider a nostalgia pop.
Yo,
But
if it's fan service, I mean, he's doing a much better job than Star Wars.
oh yeah,
I'm enjoying his stories, and I watch Star Wars, and the fan service that they give us is just, it's ridiculous. Like C-3PO, I just want to have one last look at my friends
Cringe.
that I've been with for like 15 minutes throughout my life.
oh yeah, dude. It's look, there are varying degrees of success with fan service. I just think that Gates is, if it is all fan service, which I don't buy that. And he's an excellent writer. But anyway, if you're going to invest the $5, you're going to get Donny Cates. You're not going to go out on a limb and necessarily get the new Spider-Woman.
Well, I mean, like Jason, for instance. I mean, are you going to read Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and then hand it down to your kid and be like, "Hey, read this"? I mean, I think you have mostly sons. I think you have all sons, right?
No, I've got a son and a daughter.
Oh, okay. All right. So, like, I don't know. I don't even know if your daughter would probably like it. Like, like nobody wants to read about this bullshit.
Yeah. I
Well,
can tell you,
Go ahead.
my son Parker, named for Spider-Man here. He's getting ready to turn 3, and he hurt me a little bit this week when he told me his favorite superhero is Captain America. So,
Oh man, that's
I was like,
brutal.
That's crushing.
At least you could get a shield to add to that wall back.
But it could be worse. He could have told you his favorite superhero was Batman. You'd have to check him into like some kind of hospital for that.
I'd be okay with Batman. I'd be
Would
okay with
you?
Batman.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, look. If he's not actually able to read the comic books yet, so Chris Evans, pretty cool dude.
It's my fault. It's my fault. I bought him a Captain America outfit, the mask, the shield. I created a monster. What can I say?
Yeah. I mean, you could have totally went the other direction and got him like a Venom or a Carnage, and then you could have started him down the road of Spider-Man. He'll get there though. You just gotta stay the course. Stay the course.
What was that book that you showed me earlier? Sunstroke and
Midnight and Apollo.
Okay, so I mean, he could have came to you and said, "I want to be Midnight or Apollo," right? So, I mean, Captain America is kind of like a win from the dead.
Yeah.
Todd put it in perspective for me.
Yeah. Todd's got a way of doing that, man. He's got a way of doing that. He shows you it could always be worse.
Now, John, You mentioned that you will complete Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1. What is the earliest issue of Amazing Spider-Man #1 that you have?
I have crud. I would have to look in my, hang on. Let me get my CLZ because I don't want to be wrong. It's in the 30s, I believe.
If it's in the 30s, John, you've got millions of dollars of books you already
No, I
have.
know, no, dude, I know. It may end up being a never-ending quest, to be honest with you. And look, to be really honest with you, I've told my wife there are 2 books. If I ever own them, regardless of what state the rest of my collection is in, I'm done. My collection is complete. I need no more. One of them is Amazing Spider-Man #1, and the other one is Amazing Fantasies 15.
Yeah.
If I get those 2 books as a Spider-Man primary guy, what else is there? Really,
Yeah,
what else is there?
I've told my wife I will never own those books because I could never, even if I had the money somehow to purchase them, I couldn't justify the purchase. It would just be like, I just can't imagine.
Considering you could buy a vehicle or a car or a house, depending on how high the grade is, for one of those. And look, man, again, if you got that kind of scratch where you can set on one of those, I'm super happy for you.
It'll be after the kids have gone to college.
It'll be after I've like kicked it up and been like, I'm retired. I'm a full-time retiree. That would be when it would be for me.
Now I'm not a Spider-Man collector, but I got 129, and my wife's still waiting for me to sell that because I bought it for like $500, and then I told her I'm going to sell it like right away, and she keeps asking me like, when are you going to sell that?
I'll give you $500 for it.
No, I can't do that.
I'm sorry, Jason, I was wrong. It's not in the 30s. It is actually number 40. That's my oldest one. It's
okay.
That John Romita. It's an awesome cover, and I have the second appearance of Rhino as well, which is kind of cool. But yes, I literally have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Amazing Spider-Man still yet. But I mean, honestly, I've got smoking deals on a lot of the stuff that I've got. I'm a budget collector, man. That's really who I am at heart. Is half of the fun for me is finding a smoking deal on a book.
Yeah.
And finding that smoking deal on a book means that, well, like for instance, that one, I was in it was a flea market that I frequented, and I was talking to a buddy of mine behind the counter, and he was dabbling in comic books at the time, and he had 4 books there, and he was holding 4 books for me. Well, I paid that one off, and I'll be doggoned if I didn't go back a month later, and the flea market was gone. So the other 3 books that he was holding for me, just gone. They're in the ether. They're nowhere to be found now, and I don't begrudge him. I didn't show up for a month. But you know, that one, like I say, you just happened to walk in at the right time. He's like, hey, you're a Spider-Man guy. Is this one you're interested in? Heck yeah, I'm interested in that. Gave me a smoking deal on it. I walked out with it same day. And the crazy part about it was I was originally coming in with money to pay off a different book when he showed up with this one. And I'm like, I want that one instead first. Because like I said, I'm Spider-Man primary guy.
What makes you guys like want to collect Spider-Man? Like, you know, I'm trying to get all the Midnighter and Apollo series. I mean, that started like
it only did 6 issues.
Yeah, I mean that started in 1990, so I have a shot at getting all those books. But I mean, come on. I mean, I wouldn't pay what it would take to get Spider-Man #1. I mean, maybe when I'm an old man.
Who can?
I think I do.
For me, yeah. I was gonna say for me, when I started collecting, my dad said, I used to have some comic books. Your grandparents might have them. And I found that box. And sure enough, there was a Pepsi box, and it had 100 comic books in it probably, and X-Men, Daredevil, Fantastic Four, and Amazing Spider-Man. And I remember as a kid just thinking, I can't collect all of this. I have to kind of focus. And I'd always liked Spider-Man since the Electric Company. Electric Company, if you're my age group, you watch Electric Company, they had the Amazing Spider-Man on there.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was my guy. So I focused on that. And this is in the mid to late 80s. And I could buy back issues of Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man in the 200s, $1 a piece. And I had a job because my family had a business and I worked, and those paychecks went to my LCS. I walked in with $30 in cash, and I would just, how many of these can I buy at $1 a piece?
Dude, that's the way to do it. Now with me, I grew up with with not with the comic books, with the cartoons. And let's be real here, guys. We probably all have that gateway drug, like what you're talking about with the Electric Company and stuff. I remember Saturday mornings with Spider-Man and his super friends.
Amazing Friends, yeah.
That was the stuff, man. You do that, and then you also have Super Friends that was coming on. Even the short-lived Incredible Hulk cartoon that was running around. Those were my gateway drugs into comic books. The other thing was, obviously, and this is something that I think is a little more common than we probably realize too. As a younger kid, I didn't like to read. I struggled with reading. I didn't dig it. My parents, as I grew older, 12 range, they got me a monthly subscription for sports cards to Beckett. So I would get those monthly, and if I showed interest in a comic book, they'd fork over the coin to get me a comic book because it was encouraging my reading.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the main reasons why I'm a huge proponent of people. If you know a kid that's struggling reading, talk to them about superheroes, figure out who their favorite superhero is, and then offer to buy them $5 or $6 comic books of that superhero and encourage that kid to read, man. Literacy is a big stinking deal. And that's, again, my parents took the time to do those things for me. And I know not everybody is lucky that way to have parents that are attuned to that. Let's be honest, all of us as parents want to be that attuned to their kid. Not everybody is, unfortunately. But anyway,
my kids are waiting for that implant. They don't want to read comic books. They want that implant that they could register every single language.
My 17-year-old is that way. Like to the point that I'll tell him, like, we were watching the Dark Tower movie that was on TV today. And he's like, this isn't a bad movie. And I'm like, dude, this is such a crappy movie compared to the books.
Yeah, that was terrible.
He's like, Dad, come on, you're going to tell me. And I'm like, yes, because it was a 7-book series. Thousands of pages were written by Stephen King, circling back to Stephen King. Thousands of pages written by Stephen King, and they tried to cram it into 90 minutes. And it was paper thin. It was garbage. It was no good. If you want to see the real thing, you got to read the books. Well, yeah, he's like, he's not going to do it. He won't read the comics, won't read the books.
Tell him there's some Wizard of Oz shit in there. I mean, I remember reading the books, and the Wizard of Oz stuff was just like, whoa, holy smokes. Stephen King went there? Holy smokes.
But see, that's my point, though, is there has been nothing that I can do to entice the kid, okay? For instance, his favorite TV show is Chuck. You remember Chuck on NBC, the guy who had the download that, like, downloaded to his brain to be a super secret agent? they had a 3-issue miniseries comic book back in the day of Chuck. My dumb Ren went and hunted the stupid series down because it was his favorite TV show. You know what my kid did? That's cool. Sat it down, never cracked it. Could not have cared less for that comic book. Is what it is. Some kids just don't get into comic books, man.
That is why the coronavirus is gonna kill.
Dude, it's the virus that shall not be named.
Oh, sorry.
Todd, you're killing
Cri-
us, man.
Crisis Infinite Earth.
Yes,
All right. We should probably wrap this one up, and then we could. I mean, if you want to continue, we could stay on Facebook. But so let's get some final thoughts. So, John, why don't you start out, and then I'll end it out.
Right on. Final thoughts from me is support your LCS. It's never been a more important time to support your LCS. If you've got, and I'm not saying go buy comic books instead of buying toilet paper and bread, but if you got a few extra bucks from working some overtime, go buy some dollar bin stuff, man. Like Todd was talking about, make sure your LCS knows, hey, if I can't get in to pick up my pull list, let me give you the information for my debit card so I can at least pay you for it so that those guys can stay afloat. It seriously is a matter of life and death for the shops. Don't take them for granted, guys, because like you say, I've lost my fair share of LCSs. I'm just blessed that there are other ones that have filled in for them. But man, support your LCSs.
Yeah, I would say what you want, you have to support. So, yeah, definitely. If you're in a financial position, you're still working, you're still collecting a paycheck. By all means, yeah, keep your LCS, keep your local businesses afloat. They sure need your help during this.
All right. Well, I'll wrap mine up with this crisis happened in China, and I'm a little bit worried about what else China has in this bunker. So I'm happy that we actually responded to this and got a little bit of practice. But I watched the movie Outbreak the other day, and the virus in Outbreak was like, I mean, terminal. Basically, it ate your organs. And I think it's kind of crazy that we went into Iraq when we didn't know if they had any, nuclear weapons. I'm not saying
chemical weapons.
Okay, I'm not saying we should go into China. I don't want to do that. Definitely not. That would be probably the end of the world. But I hope that the world kind of recognizes and says, yo, China, like, what are you doing? What are you manufacturing there? Because I don't want to have to go through this like every 4 years. I like normal life.
Me too. So, but you're saying me watching Shaun of the Dead wasn't quite as equal to you watching Outbreak as far as like show prep for the virus that shall be not be named show?
I'm sure
like Shaun of the Dead
probably is. I'm sure like if you watch The Walking Dead, it's probably the same thing. But
okay,
those are my final thoughts. I hope you all stay safe and healthy. Wash your hands. Wipe your butts, even if you have to use dollar bin comics.
That's what Valiant comics are for.
Hey, stop it. I like Bloodshot.
oh man, don't.
All right, well, peace out, everybody.
You better be good at it, guys.